Welcome in, everybody, to the Flagship Podcast. I am Chip Brown of Horns247.com, joined as always by my esteemed colleague, the one and only Eric Henry. Of course, a proud Tampa Catholic graduate. And, Eric moonlights as the ambassador for the Florida Bureau of Tourism. And we're getting close to Florida, Eric, but we're going to stop in Atlanta this week for the SEC championship game. That's right. The Texas Longhorns, by virtue of taking down Texas A&M 17-7 at Kyle Field, earned the right to a rematch with the Georgia Bulldogs, who came into DKR on October 19th, broke the furniture, broke the dishes, took their women, and said, we're out of here. But Texas is the number one seed in this meeting with the Georgia Bulldogs. They're the home team. And Eric, they've elected to wear the icy whites. Texas, the home team, but will wear their visitor icy whites. Of course, Texas has won 11 straight true road games. We might as well classify this one as a true road game because they are playing the University of Georgia, which is about 80 miles down the road from Atlanta. Eric, your thoughts?
Chip, first off, let me say this. What a great time of year, man. What a great time of year. I mean, I just was kind of thinking about this in the pre-show. It's championship weekend. We are still working. We are not sitting at home. I know Steve Sarkisian said when asked during his Monday availability, the strain and the stress of having to prepare for a SEC championship while also trying to recruit. Of course, today is December 4th. It is the first of two national signing days. And I just felt the same way, Chip. I'm like, you know what? And this is no shade on any of, the teams I've covered in the past or work I've done in the past. But, man, Chip, for a long time, come like late November, work was done, right? Like there was no bowl game to cover. You looked forward to NSD, but, there was nothing else to look forward to. So that just resonated with me as being like, man, it is fun to still be doing this, be covering games that are important, that matter. So that I just want to get that off of my chest. My initial thoughts on what you just mentioned, I love the fact that Steve Sarkisian not breaking from sort of the tradition of wearing the road uniforms, because this is a road game. There's no two ways about it. I thought it was cute that the SEC decided to make Texas the home team. And Chip, I'll be honest, I never know what goes into those neutral site decisions, right? Sometimes it's, record or these things. Let's not be naive, right? That game is taking place 80 miles away from Athens, Georgia. This is a home game for Georgia. Why break from the mentality that's gotten you here? 85 people against 100,000. Or in this case, I think the Mercedes-Benz Stadium seats about 80-something thousand, right? I mean, why break from that mentality? We all know what it is. There's no point in trying to dress this up like a home game for Texas. So I love everything about that approach. Love everything about this week, Chip, and I'm fired up to dive into the rematch. I mean, Chip, how often do we get a rematch of a game that, while it wasn't, at the end of the day, it wasn't the best football game.
Wasn't an instant classic.
It wasn't an instant classic, but it's one that you'd want to see again, right? You'd want to see both teams at their best. Before we get too far down the road, I talked about this in my Q&A at exchange with Jordan Hill. Our version, the Georgia answers to mine, will be up on the site later today. And we both talked about the fact that October 19th, if memory serves me correct, was not the best game, not the best version for both teams. So let's dial this thing up again on Saturday and see what we got. So I'm fired up.
Yeah. In the boxing world, you typically get a rematch if you have a great fight. And Texas put up a great fight for one quarter in that Georgia game, the third quarter, when Quinn Ewers went 7 of 10 passing, 2 touchdowns, cut Georgia's halftime lead of 23-0 to 23-15. And then Georgia closed them out with felt like a month-long drive to the game-sealing touchdown for a 30-15 win.
11 plays, 89 yards, 5 minutes and 3 seconds. I just have stat broadcast up, so I just would provide the context.
Yeah. So, you look at this thing, and Texas is a different team from that one. I think we would both agree, and this is kind of where I wanted to get your thoughts. The Texas running game is obviously a nice new addition to the Longhorns arsenal. And we think that it's real because they ran for 200. They've averaged 245 yards rushing. They ran for 260 against Kentucky, 240 against A&M. They're right at 250, I should say, average. And those, Kentucky and A&M have good defensive fronts. They're coached by defensive-minded head coaches. And Texas has leaned on that running game more and more, Eric. It was 31 carries against Florida, then 41 carries against Arkansas, 47 carries against Kentucky, and 50 carries for 240 yards against A&M. Quintravian Wisner doing most of the heavy lifting. In the last two games, he's run for 344 yards and 5.8 yards per carry. How real is that running game, Eric, against these Georgia Bulldogs?
Chip, as you were talking, I was trying to find the quote by Steve Sarkisian. I couldn't find it directly in time, but the gist of it, I'll sum it up. Chip, you and I, we've talked ad nauseum, week after week after week, post-game after post-game, about Texas's run game, right? And I've used this phrase many times, this saying, where Steve Sarkisian said it to me after the Louisiana-Monroe game. Hey, if I can point to the box score and I say 300 passing and 200 rushing, it's a great day. The gist of what Sark's comment was, I don't want to misquote him, but I believe the exact quote was, hey, we finally are starting to get the type of running game where when everyone in the stadium knows we need to run it, we're able to do so. At least that was the gist of it. So I apologize if that's not a verbatim quote. But that was the gist of what Steve Sarkisian said on Monday. Chip, that's the type of run game that I've been looking for all year. And forgive me, Chip, I'm gonna kind of, be a little bit all over the place here, but just stay with me, yourself and audience. Last year, remember, C.J. Baxter opened the year as a starting running back, right? And I think both of us would agree that the run game over those first 2 weeks, while it produced yardage, wasn't exactly what you'd want it to be, right? The run game really took off when Jonathan Brooks entered the lineup, and the rest is history. JB went to rush for, I think 1,100 yards, maybe just shy of it, and became an NFL draft pick. You fast forward this year, C.J. Baxter goes down with injury, and a lot of the conversation, and that includes us, was, hey, the run game shouldn't miss a beat. And why would you expect it to miss a beat, Chip? Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson, Jonathan Brooks, it just picks up with Tashard Choice, right, leading that group. And we just kind of thought, hey, Jaden Blue, Trey Wisner, we know the talent, Jarrett Gibson, they're talented guys. They'll pick up. Veteran offensive line, it'll run smoothly. Obviously, it's been a bit of work in progress. Chip, would I be out of line to say, and this again is no shade on CJ last year, as we saw someone who grew towards the end of last year, no shade on Jaden Blue, someone who, again, like a Jonathan Brooks, like a CJ Baxter last year, didn't have a ton of experience, right? Only had 90-something career touches entering the year. There is something to running behind this offensive line, running behind any offensive line, and kind of figuring out what works best, right? Remember last year, we realized Jonathan Brooks' one cut and go style just worked a little bit better than what CJ Baxter was still adapting to the college game. I think Quintravian Wisner, his rushing style just works a little bit better. It's a little bit, it works a little bit more in synergy with this offensive line. So I'm saying all that to say, Chip, the fact that Texas is finding the consistency in the run game, getting 4 and 5 yards when you need to run it, doing it against a pair of really good front sevens in Texas and Kentucky, I think just bodes really well. Again, are they going to do what they've done the past 2 weeks? 90-something carries for I I think 490 yards, 250 and 240 respectively over the past 2 weeks. Are they able to do that against Georgia? I don't think so. But can they line it up and be much more efficient than the way they were in week, 6, 7, whatever that was? My thought is yes. And I think, Chip, to give it back to you, it's the a combination of the run game finding its stride, the right runner being behind the offensive line, kind of finding their stride, and all those things come together. So I know I said a lot there, Chip, but you let me know if you, A, if you're able to follow, and B, if you think there's some validity in kind of that hypothesis.
Yeah, and I think they've made some good adjustments to the blocking scheme in the run game. We talked about this a little bit last week. They've sort of gap schemed more to the right side of the line and stuck with the zone blocking on the inside outside zone on the left side of the line as we speak. Of course, it is National Signing Day. Kelvin Banks is trending in the right direction to play in the SEC championship game. I'm hearing that he's been able to practice so far this week, and that it looks like he will be available to the Texas Longhorns in the SEC championship game. And it is crazy. It's been a bit of an odyssey for this Texas running game because, we joked after the A&M game that he won the job in part by default. Quintravian Wisner, he's the only guy who can hang on to the football. Jaden Blue's had some ball security issues. Jarek Gibson, the same. So look, doesn't matter how you slice it, as long as it comes up with production and the right yards per carry. And right now, Texas is dialed in to that formula. And so very eager to see, because obviously if Texas has a running game that it can count on against this formidable Georgia defensive front that tormented them on October 19th, guys like Michael Williams, Jalen Walker, Landon Wilson, they were all over the Texas backfield to 7 sacks among their 10 tackles for loss. Texas turned the ball over 4 times, 2 strip sacks, a couple of interceptions. So I think it's fair to say that was one of Texas's worst games of the year, if not the worst, because they didn't look prepared. And what I'll segue into here, Eric, is the Georgia stemming of their defensive line, that last second adjustment from, going from a 3-man line to a 4-man line, or a 4-man line to a 3-man line. And, suddenly you're in the right protection and then you're in the wrong protection. And Texas looked like they'd never practiced against that. So that's going to be something to watch as well.
Yeah, Chip, I'm going to touch on 2 things. One, really quick, just back to the run game. Appreciate that call out you referenced there in terms of the kind of adjusting of the rushing scheme, right, between zone and gap. Because how often, Chip, do we hear? I am no high school football expert. However, if I had to put I'll speak for Florida. I can't speak for Texas. But if I just were to round ball it, Chip, 75, 80% of high school teams are running gap scheme. You know what I mean? Like in terms of backs, right? So that was, I think, a very smart adjustment, because yes, you're going to do things differently at the collegiate level, but if you need to jumpstart the backs, sometimes those types of adjustments are necessary. So I wanted to acknowledge that. In terms of the stemming, that's another thing that I don't want to come down hard on the O-line, but stemming is not a revolutionary concept, Chip. Like all teams do it in some form or fashion, right? Like in terms of whether it's the pass rush or getting in different gaps. All teams do it, right? It's just a matter of preparation. And to your point, you talked about Texas almost looking at times the offensive line as if they'd never seen it. That just reminded me, it just gave me flashbacks of last year, right? With the whole, standing up the bucks and doing things, as far as with the edge rushers and who's going to come in where and the joker fronts and things of that nature. It's one of those things that I think, I'm not out to critique Steve Sarkisian or Kyle Floyd or anything like that. I just think sometimes you can, I want to speak carefully. You can over prepare, meaning like you get so honed in on specific things that almost you take the natural spontaneity out of things, right? In terms of like just being able to adjust for X or Y that may come on the fly. And sometimes those things are learning things, right, Chip? Sometimes those are adjustments that are made in the first quarter, second quarter. Sometimes it takes a whole game to adjust to those things, right? And that gives me a lot of confidence in Texas's ability the second time around, because once you've seen it, at least your mind can conceptualize this is what I'm seeing, as opposed to trying to read and react on the fly. And it's like, oh crap, like Chip, you were there in the post game with me after Georgia. One of the things that stood out to me was Texas's offensive line. Jake Majors is a player that Texas sends routinely for Monday media and post game. Jake is very rarely ever shell shocked. And when we spoke with Jake, he had this look on his face like, I know that wasn't us, but I also don't know what happened out there, right? And I don't mean he doesn't know, like he was literally didn't know. I mean, just in terms of like, what did we just face? Like that isn't us, right? So I do think this second time around, things should be better for Texas. But of course, as you mentioned, a lot of that hinges on the health of Kelvin Banks Jr., who, as you said, you heard is practicing. I believe Steve Sarkisian did say on Monday that Kelvin did participate. So that certainly will play a big part as well.
Yeah. I think this is going to be a great challenge for the Texas offense, but I think that the Texas offense is trending in the right direction. We saw, let's move on to Quinn Ewers, because Quinn Ewers got benched in this game. First time probably he's ever been benched in his football career, dating back to Pee Wee ball. Got benched in this Georgia game after turning the ball over a couple times, ineffective. He looked shell-shocked. He wasn't moving particularly well. This was his second game back from the oblique injury, and we know he looked uncomfortable against Oklahoma. He looked uncomfortable against Georgia, and for good reason. He had Michael Williams and Jalen Walker, Landon Wilson all over him. But Quinn Ewers, I thought, looked really good in the Texas A&M game after the first possession, Eric. He got into a rhythm. He was hitting deep balls, 44-yarder to Matt Golden, a 35-yarder to Ryan Wingo. He was moving around in the pocket. He had a situation where he got flushed, looked like he was going to run, then he pulled up and threw for a first down. That, I think, also bodes well for the Longhorns, because he looked like big game Quinn Ewers again from about 5 minutes into the first quarter into the midway through the third quarter. And then the pick six happened. That was even if that pass wasn't tipped, it was going to get intercepted. So I'm not quite sure what he was thinking there, but obviously the fact that he was so competent through most of the first half was a good sign, especially in that environment.
Yeah, Chip. I mean, the thing that was the most reassuring sign for me was that scramble by Quinn. Because how many times have we talked about Quinn Ewers' ability to use his legs on 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, and pick up the first down? Quinn Ewers is not going to be a dual threat. He's not going to rush he's not Marcel Reed, right? He's not going to rush for 200 yards in a game. But that is an element of his game that does matter, has been crucial to this Texas offense, and was missing when he was going through the abdominal injury, and you were wondering, could he do it with the ankle injury? Right now, to go back and take a look at Quinn Ewers' passing chart here, you talk about him getting in rhythm. Yeah, outside of missed the first two passes, let me go ahead and run down the passing chart. Goes 0 for 2. Ironically enough, Chip, the next 4 passes, which are all completions, went for, if my math here is correct, -7, -9 plus -6 yards, right? He had the screen to Trey Wisner, went for -3, had a 3-yard completion to Gunnar Helm, a -4-yard completion to Gunnar Helm, -2-yard completion to DeAndre Moore. But at least he's able to get things in rhythm, because what's followed up after that is the 3rd and 7, 14-yard completion to Helm, the 44-yard pass to Matt Golden, and then he completes 3 more. A touchdown pass to Jaden Blue and the 35-yarder to Ryan Wingo. It's that type of rhythm, Chip, that how many times have we seen early in games when Quinn will start 7 of 9, 8 of 10, 10 of 12, right? Hell, sometimes 11 of 11, right? Sometimes he's been that. Those things I think matter. Those things I think matter a lot. Getting Quinn Ewers in rhythm, getting the offense in rhythm. Now, again, credit to A&M. They snuffed out some of those screen passes, but nevertheless, Those things matter, Chip. If I went back and looked at Quinn's passing chart against Georgia, I can probably do this on the flies. I've got the Georgia game pulled up. Bear with me. Let me just make my way over to Quinn Ewers. It didn't look like that at all. Let's go and take a look at Quinn's passing chart here. It was, ironically enough, Chip, okay. This is where things kind of go off the rail. He completes his first 4 passes, but then goes one of 7 afterwards, one of those being an INT. And by that point in time in the game, the Texas offense has handed Georgia so many short fields. By the time Quinn's able to get in rhythm and complete the next 7 of his next 10 passes, Texas is already down 2 scores, right? So those things do matter in terms of getting Quinn Ewers in rhythm, getting this offense in rhythm. But again, Chip, I don't want to stray too far, because it all starts in my mind with the run game, staying on schedule, being able to do those things with Quintravian Wisener. And ideally, Chip, this may be a little too much to ask, but ideally it would look like the Kentucky game where Jaden Blue is a significant contributor as well. Because I think it's a lot, Chip, to ask. And I know you may transition away from, Quintravian Wisener, so I just want to mention this before, you go whichever direction. It's a lot to ask of Trey, who's had 79 carries over the last 3 games, for a guy who, listen, I know you do it in high school, Chip. 33 carries at high school level. It's a lot different than 33 carries against A&M in the SEC. That's the type of game that leaves you, as Quintravian said, needing a massage after the game. 33 carries in high school, you're probably not getting touched 20 of those. You're getting touched a lot in the SEC, Chip.
Yeah, you're getting touched a lot. That's like 6 car accidents. I figure it's a car accident every 5 carries. It depends on if it's hopefully it's not a head-on. Hopefully it's like a fender bender.
Sure.
But that position is brutal. And Quintravian Wisener, there's a reason that Steve Sarkisian said he may be the toughest guy on our team with the punishment that he's absorbed and doled out. But even as you're doling out punishment, you're still in a collision. So Quintravian Wisener, he's become an MVP candidate for this football team, certainly on the offensive side of the football at just the right time. I don't think there's any question, because for those who are loyal listeners to the Flagship Podcast, and we appreciate you, please like and subscribe the Horns 24/7 YouTube channel so that you get notifications whenever we pop up with an episode. This all season we've been saying, well, they're they're throwing to set up the run. And at the end of games, it looked good. But oftentimes you'd look back at the first quarter, the second quarter, and it was a struggle, real struggle. And these last few games, the running game has been established early, and it has been a key part of this offense from the beginning. And now you would almost say, okay, they can run to set up play action, as opposed to, throwing the football to loosen up, get the safeties back, get the backers spread out, to create room for the running game. Now they can establish the run. We'll see, but the last couple of games, they've been able to establish the run early. So that's a significant difference from when Texas faced Georgia back in October. And, now we're getting questions about, where's Isaiah Bond? What's going on? Earlier in the year, where's Ryan Wingo? Look, when you have 5 go-to receivers, it's going to bounce around. The ball's going to find different guys, as Steve Sarkisian likes to say. Plus, Gunnar Helm. I don't think we've talked enough about Gunnar Helm. Eric,
who's we, Chip? I'm just kidding. You're
the president of the Gunnar Helm fan club, but Gunnar Helm, good God, he is without a doubt the go-to guy on third down, on money downs when Quinn's in trouble. And why not? I'd be looking for the 6'6" guy with extender arms too. One of the most amazing plays in that A&M game was the keyhole window that he he threw it through. I don't know. Bryce Anderson didn't intercept that ball. It looked like the ball went right through his hands. Kudos to Gunnar Helm for staying focused and catching that ball for a first down. But look, Isaiah Bond's good. He's healthy. He's ready. And I'm sure Sark will have something dialed up for Sark likes to have some stuff for this game, Eric. Remember the Big 12 title game last year? He had the double pass to Jatavian Sanders. He had the end zone pass to Tavondre Sweat. He put some stuff in the game plan. Whether he gets to it or not, we'll see. But Sark usually has a couple of little fresh wrinkles for these big stage games.
Chip, I'm going to look for one more quote from Steve Sarkisian because I want to read it off correctly. But I think it's really ironic that you mentioned that, right, in terms of the little wrinkles. And you talked about it, right? We did see some of that at the Big 12 title game. It's like, all right, Sark's really digging deep into his bag. Of course, I'm trying to find the quote here on the fly. Just look, I'm about to find it. But Steve Sarkisian on Monday said, Chip, and I'm sure you were there. Oh, here we go. We got it. Said, we're going to run stuff Saturday that we haven't run all year because of who we are now as a team and finding new ways to move the football and create issues for our opponents. Chip, I smiled when I heard that one because my mind went directly back to the Big 12 title game last year. You're not going to get me to believe, right? And I almost kind of recoil a little bit when some people say, oh, Texas, we're Steve Sarkisian doing a little vanilla as far as game plan. No, with a guy like Sark, I think there are enough plays and that you can utilize a different game plan for opponent X and opponent Y, but it doesn't mean that he's leaving anything out or leaving anything back, right? Like, Chip, in my mind, if I may sidebar for a minute, that's one of the things that impresses me about the best play callers is that they can have an entire game plan for a Florida or a Kentucky or so on and so forth. That doesn't mean that they have to, call everything on their call sheet, right? Nothing bugs me more. And again, I'm going to sound as if like I'm being some coaching wizard. I'm not. I'm just giving you my thought. Is when I see coaches with that Waffle House menu, like you can't call everything, right? And we've talked about this. When you get into a game plan, you got to whittle it down. You got to dial it down to certain things. But I love that Steve Sarkisian can have an entirely different game plan for X versus Y and still have things in the bag, right? So for a fact come Saturday, if the opportunity runs itself, you may see a little something that maybe the Kansas City Chiefs might want to rip off next week again, as they did earlier this season. Who knows? But to your point, yes, I think there's plenty to see on Saturday, and some of that definitely should involve Isaiah Bond, a guy who Texas has found different ways to get the ball in his hands, whether it's been in the screen game, passing, reverses, etc. Definitely am expecting a big-time game from the greater Atlanta area native heading back home.
Yeah, it was funny. Someone asked him, are you familiar with on the SEC call we had, are you familiar with the Mercedes-Benz Dome? He was like, yeah, I was the offensive coordinator for the Falcons for 2 years. And the guy's like, oh, so you know about the visitor locker room? And he's like, no, I know about the Falcons home locker room, which is where Texas will be as the home team.
I'm sorry, Chip. Did someone ask that?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, do your homework. Steve Sarkisian lived in the Mercedes-Benz Dome for a couple of years there with Dan Quinn as the head coach of the Falcons.
It's that question, the follow-up question. Why would never mind. Continue the show, Chip. Would the Atlanta Falcons offensive coordinator know what the visitors locker room looks like? Just continue. I think the guy realized maybe someone stole his question and he fumbled. Fumbled late. Eric, obviously we got to talk about this Texas defense because it is the story. It's the reason I think Texas has a chance to win a national championship. This defense is going to keep Texas in every game because they're so opportunistic. They're so well connected. And that's the thing that stood out to me the most about Michigan last year. They were so well connected. You could see the communication happening before every play. Everybody knew where they were going, what they were doing. And they just, as
Mike Elko said they annihilated us physically, and that Texas defense absolutely did. 3 fourth down stops, including a 4th and goal from the 1, really toward the end of the game. And this Texas defense, as we've said, just keeps getting better. Sign of a well-coached team is week-to-week improvement. We're seeing it. Guys like Trey Moore making plays behind the line every game now. Jermaine Lollet, we're not talking enough about Jermaine Lollet. If it's not Alfred Collins, it's Vernon Broughton. If it's not Vernon Broughton, it's Jermaine Lollet and Bill Norton. And Anthony Hill is an eraser. David Benda with his, and Leonga Lafau coming off a career game against A&M, including a forced fumble. That secondary is the best in the country, hands down. So very eager to see, because Carson Beck has cleaned up his act. 12 touchdowns, no picks the last 3 games. And, one of those was against UMass. So let's not get crazy. But, and one was an 8 overtime game against Georgia Tech. But Eric, your thoughts on this Texas defense?
You took the words right out of my mouth with Carson Beck. No disrespect to the great Minutemen. I think that's what UMass is still called now.
Oh, yeah.
Nevertheless, yeah, they ain't Texas.
Which is an unfortunate mascot name. If you're,
it is an unfortunate mascot name, and I've covered, ironically enough, 5 UMass games. I should know. Hell, I've even been to a McGurk Alumni Stadium, so I should know UMass's mascot. Nevertheless, back to Texas. Chip, Jermaine Lollet not being talked about enough. That Georgia game last week, that Georgia game last time around, I got tongue-tied because I almost said last year, and then I was like, no, it wasn't last year, last week. The Georgia game last time around, Jermaine Lollet had 6 tackles. That's been his breaking out. He's had 22 tackles total ever since that game, right? We're talking about a guy who was at Arizona State, borderline All-American type of player, definitely an all-conference type player out there in the Pac-12, right? So for him to kind of find his stride, Chip, you talked about the sign of a great team being week-to-week improvement. One of the things that I look for over a 12, 13, 14 game season is when you can get additional playmakers. I will shout out, I've done it on the show before. I'll do it again. Butch Davis, when I covered him at FIU, told me for him, the ceiling on true freshmen, that kind of goes out the window by like week 7, week 8, week 9. You've been with the program almost for a year. If you are a talented player, we expect you to start contributing in some way. It doesn't mean you're going to be Colin Simmons, right, and have that type of production, but at least those who are going to start showing promise early on and have shown signs that they can be an impact player, you almost remove that freshman label from them and expect them to, find ways to contribute. It's the same thing with kind of some of those developmental players, right? Jelani McDonald, while not a freshman, he's someone who has stepped up and is now being an impact guy. Kobe Black, Leonga Lafau, et cetera, right? So that, to me, Chip, is the sign of this defense continuing to improve. The fact that you're now getting additional playmakers, that's huge. That is, it's immeasurable, right? I talked about this guy in a previous Ask Me Anything Wednesday, which of course is going on right now on the board, horns247.com. I will, it's my day for Ask Me Anything, so drop your questions there. But talk about Ethan Burke is kind of like a reserve. And granted, he's not, a traditional backup, only seeing 5 to 7 snaps, but he's another guy who, again, while Trey Moore is the starter, getting contributions off the edge from him, getting contributions from Bill Norton and Alex January and others. So those things, Chip, are huge to me. JJR, right? Another guy who stepped in when his time was available, when Makuba was down. Those things matter to me, Chip. So you talk about what impresses me with the defense. Of course, Anthony Hill, Jahdae Barron, the list goes on. But getting those additional playmakers to me, Chip, that I think those things in a game like this, that's where it matters.
Yeah, no doubt about it. This is going to be fun, and this is we got a question from Football Junkie. How many all SEC players will Texas have, and when will it be released? Not quite sure on when it'll be released, but this is going to be interesting to see who gets left off from Texas, because I think if you start with the defense, you can certainly make an argument for Michael Taft, for Andrew Makuba, for Jahdae Barron, Anthony Hill. And you know, I don't know, maybe it's too much by committee at the defensive end position with Sorrell and Colin Simmons and Trey Moore and Ethan Burke. But do any of the interior D linemen get some SEC recognition? They should.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the best defense in the SEC. So very, very intrigued to see about that. And Gunnar Helm, he should absolutely be the first team all SEC tight end. So let's see if they get that right. Eric, anything else? One other point, special teams. Georgia's punter. We did not talk enough about Georgia's punter because this guy is a weapon. Thorson.
Brett Thorson, right?
Yeah, Brett Thorson, the guy averaged 54 yards per punt on 4 punts against Texas. He was pinning Texas back deep in its own territory, and it was a problem. So Thorson is I mean, any punter with Thor in his name, you got to watch out because this guy he's no joke. And I mean, you average 54 yards per punt. That is nasty. And so watch out for Georgia in terms of the punting game. And, you know, when you look at their, Woodring is solid as the field goal kicker. He had a 44-yarder, a 48-yarder, and a 33-yarder against Texas. So Georgia probably gets the edge on special teams for sure because Texas, as we knew would probably be the case, is struggling in the punting area with a freshman punter. They're probably struggling more than they thought they would be, quite honestly, because they're among the worst in the country in net punting. They are 129th, averaging 35 yards per punt in net punting. So that's the punt plus the return. It's not good. Georgia is 3rd in the country in net punting, averaging 44.3 yards per punt after the return. So, when you look at penalty yards, Georgia is getting penalized about 55.5 yards per game. Texas is getting penalized 50.3 yards per game. So pretty close there. Neither one are numbers to be proud of, but you look at red zone offense, Eric, and Georgia they're a top 10 red zone offense. Now, I don't know how that changes without Trevor Etienne. He's not expected to play in this game. He was a huge factor in the Texas game in October, scored 3 touchdowns, I believe. Nate Frazier, the young, talented running back, is just that, a young, talented running back who will also make plays. He's not maybe Trevor Etienne, though.
Yeah, no, Chip, to your point there in terms of, and let me start with the special teams first with Brett Thorson. If memory serves correct, he had 3 punts of 50 yards or more and 2 that landed inside the 20, right? So you're talking about this guy flipping the field. Remember, that was a field position game, right? Now, Texas's offense certainly didn't do its part to help out the defense with the field position, but that was a field position game. So certainly something to keep an eye on. You never thought that, you go back and you take a look at Texas in the punt game. The ability, it's one thing, we're just talking about a freshman punter doing his job, and that's great. But it's one thing between that and another thing to be a weapon, right? Someone who can flip the field and do that back to other teams. So that's a good call out on your part. But no, I think the likely absence of Trevor Etienne is going to be certainly a factor, right? Someone who scored multiple touchdowns the first time these two teams played. And also in a game like this, Chip, again, and we can have this discussion. We'll probably do more of it later in the week. This was a game that when the first matchup rolled around, you looked at it, and Chip, you always talk about, the team with the best quarterback, the Barry Switzer line, the team with the best quarterback is going to leave with the win. When you look at the first matchup, you thought, which team's quarterback can go win it for him? And I'm not taking anything away from Carson Beck or Quinn Ewers, but the second time around, it almost feels like which team's quarterback isn't going to lose it for him. And I'm not taking anything away from either player and their talents, right? But let's call a spade a spade. Beck throws 3 interceptions last time around. Quinn Ewers certainly had his struggles at points through the season as well. So that is a storyline. When you talk about a guy like Etienne being out, that's just more pressure on Carson Beck, in my mind, Chip.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to have, the weapons that you can distribute the ball to. I think you give that to Texas without a doubt. I mean, when you talk about Gunnar Helm, Matt Golden, Ryan Wingo, Isaiah Bond, Jaden Blue in the passing game, who, again, the guy had one big play in the A&M game, and it was for a touchdown, and it was an unbelievable catch where he had a defender draped all over him. He makes a one-handed catch, somehow keeps his foot in bounds. Like, Jaden Blue is still a weapon, and a weapon that Texas needs and uses in the passing game and the running game, but especially in the passing game. And so I think you give that check mark for sure to Texas. So if Quinn Ewers is big game Quinn Ewers, and that, kudos to that, whatever, Takeo company for that cast that take the Takeo brace. In the Insider last week, I talked about Quinn Ewers wearing a stiff brace. Now we all know it's made by Takeo, and it's apparently some kind of magic fix. Kelvin Banks, I hear, is using the Takeo brace. So anyway, we'll see. Eric, before we get to some take it or leave it, Texas basketball, you want to give a little men's update, and I'll give a quick women's update, and then we'll get to some take it or leave it.
Yeah, obviously Texas basketball plays tonight, 8:15 Central Time on ESPN2. Heading to Raleigh, North Carolina, to take on NC State. A bit of a homecoming for Caden Shedrick, who's from Holly Springs, North Carolina, 20 minutes outside of Raleigh. When we spoke with Caden yesterday, talked about him playing in that arena many times. I know it, Chip, as the Raleigh Sports Entertainment Center. I don't know what it's called nowadays. The corporate naming rights get the best of me. Nevertheless, talk about going to NC State games as a kid. Went to a couple Carolina Hurricanes games, Chip, last year, their playoff run. So very familiar with that building. So it'll be a homecoming for Caden. But as far as Texas on the court, keep an eye out. Jason Kent doesn't look like he's going to be back anytime soon with that wrist injury. I think it's going to be interesting. NC State has a pair of bigs, Ben Middlebrooks. I'm forgetting the other kid's name right now, 2 6'10" bigs. It's going to put a lot of responsibility on Caden Shedrick, Jamie Vinson coming in now, being one of those bigs off the bench. Of course, Chip's favorite player, Zarek Onyema, will have to play a factor as well there off the bench. But another game, Chip, that RT Rodney Terry called a measuring stick for his team. He referred to the Ohio State game as a measuring stick. I have to agree with him. The last thing I'll say is this. I don't know how big of college basketball nerds our audience is, but shout out to Ken Pomeroy, who, of course, does a great job with the Ken Pom rankings. Texas has only faced 2 opponents this year who have been ranked in the top 100 in Ken Pom, right? That's usually the case with your non-conference schedule. But I only mention that as to say the rest of the teams, they've been like in the 300s and below, all right? And they're only 366 Division I men's basketball teams. So Texas being about a bunch of tomato cans. This next 2-game stretch between NC State and UConn, gonna be a real early measuring stick for Texas men's basketball, Chip.
Okay. Well, for the Texas women, they come off of a 78-73 win over number 12 ranked West Virginia. And Thursday, tomorrow, they will be in South Bend to take on number 10 Notre Dame. So Texas passed the test in its first meaningful competition. They've been blowing teams out by 40 all season leading up to that game against West Virginia. Texas won at 78-73 with balanced scoring. Rory Harmon was the player of the tournament in this the Gulf Coast Showcase in Estero, Florida. And, of course, Texas won that. And now they'll go take on number 10 Notre Dame in South Bend. The player to watch here is Layla Filia. She's been in and out of the lineup with, recovering from injury. And we haven't really seen her impose her will the way that I think, she averaged 17 points per game for Michigan last year. She can do it all. She can rebound. She's super strong for a guard and can, 3-level score, all of that. She's still settling in. So I think this is going to be a really good test for the Texas women going on the road. All right, Eric. By the way, the Texas women 7-0, if I didn't mention that. So, and they're a force. They could win it all. All right. You ready for some take it or leave it, Eric?
Chip Brown, I'm always ready for America's favorite game. Take it or leave it.
America's favorite game, by God. All right. Then let's get to it. Take it or leave it. You want to give us the update?
Oh, yeah. Let me provide the update here. So last week, Chip Brown went 3-0. He's back hitting his stride. He's like the Texas run game. You went 3-0. I went 2-1. The three questions, in case you forgot: over 150 sack adjusted yards, which means, without the sack yardage included. Both of us took that. That was a winner. Texas defense forces at least 2 turnovers. Texas's defense did do that for the 7th straight game. So that was a winner. Both of us took that. And Quinn Ewers will pass for 200 yards, at least 200 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I took that and was wrong. Chip Brown left that and was correct. So there you go.
All right. Well, we got a fresh set of take it or leave it. So
I got you, Chip. Take it or leave it. Number 1, the Longhorns rush for at least 175 yards in the SEC title game. Chip, again, we going to make that sack adjusted?
Yeah, we should probably make it sack adjusted, right?
We will make it sack adjusted. So Texas rushes for at least 175 sack adjusted yards in the SEC title game. Take it or leave it, Chip.
I know. This looks like it's so appetizing with the way Texas has been running it against Kentucky and A&M, and Georgia looks like they're vulnerable because they gave up 226 yards rushing to UMass. But Eric, I am going to leave this. I think Texas comes in just under 175 in the sack adjusted rush yardage. What say you?
I am going to leave this as well. 175 sack adjusted. Love the way this run game's been performing. That feels like a lot against a very talented Georgia defense in a game, Chip, that, listen, if Texas comes out and it's, 49-0, right? Hey, it's all, roses and marshmallows and all those other things. I don't see that happen. I think this is going to be a slugfest, and one that I can't quite see Texas getting that amount of sack adjusted rushing yardage against the Bulldogs, Chip. And I'll quickly acknowledge the comment there, just because we addressed this earlier. Geese88, you said y'all think Banks will play. As Chip said, first off, make sure you check out the Insider, because I'm sure I'll have an update there. But as Chip said, everything he's hearing is trending that Kelvin Banks is looking like he will play. No declaration just yet, but things are trending in the right direction. So I'll just address that comment since we addressed it earlier in the show. Chip, take it or leave it, number 2.
Take it or leave it, number 2. Texas's offense will have at least 1 turnover. Eric, take it or leave it.
I'm taking it, Chip. Again, I think this is going to be a defensive slugfest. I think there are going to be plays to be made by both teams. We're going to knock on wood that it is not a Jaden Blue fumble, just because, listen, again, in this job, you try not to get personal attachments. You don't want to, root for anybody, but Jaden Blue is such a good kid. You hate to see another mishap there for him. So you hope it's not that, but I do think Texas will have 1 turnover, Chip. What's this?
Yeah, it just seems like it's so hard for Texas to get through a game clean, what they've had 3 this year. And that's not the majority. So I too will leave this.
You're leaving.
I'm taking this.
Yeah, okay,
Sorry, taking this. Texas offense will have at least 1 turnover. I will take that. You hope that the Texas defense, if you're a Longhorns fan, can win the turnover battle. But yeah, I think Texas probably has 1 turnover in this game. All right, take it or leave it. Number 3, he's red hot, Eric.
Yep, Trey Moore will have at least 1 tackle for loss in the SEC title game. Take it or leave it.
Listen, who am I to disrupt the heater that Trey Moore is on? I am going to take this. Trey Moore will have at least 1 tackle for loss in the SEC title game. He's had at least 1 tackle for loss in 4 straight games against Florida, Arkansas, Kentucky, and A&M. So the trend is in that direction. I'm going to take this, Eric. What say you?
Chip, I am going to take it. I'll also address David Hill's comment. He says Texas ain't fixing to have no turnovers. You get off the line with that. David, I will. We'll be off the line about 5 minutes. Don't worry about that. Nevertheless, I am going to I'm going to take it, Chip. You know, if I may sidebar for a second, Steve Sarkisian pushed back a little bit. You know, he said, hey, you guys, the media, Chip, and fans, you guys sometimes expect too much, right? When you don't see the sack production, the numbers, you start thinking the guy's having a bad year. And what I wanted to say to Steve in that moment is 2 things can be true. Yes, maybe we in the media and fans can make too much if the sack numbers aren't there. And Chip, you were the guy who told us all throughout the offseason. You said to the Touchdown Club of Houston, there's one guy to keep an eye on that you guys aren't knowing about. It's Trey Moore, right? So our lovable Texas head coach did kind of set the expectation. Nevertheless, I just wanted to mention that. I am taking it, Chip. I do think Trey Moore is finding his stride at the right time. I think he's playing really good football. And to Steve's point, I do agree. I never thought Trey Moore, you know, somewhere a little harder than others. I never thought he was playing bad football. It just wasn't the type of impactful football in terms of, you know, the stat sheet, some other things that, again, quite frankly, we're kind of led to believe maybe he could have an immediate impact. But I didn't think he played bad football all year. I think he's finding his stride. So I'm taking this, Chip.
Yeah, and it's great that he found it, because you had other guys who were getting sacks, they were making plays, and they were getting way less in terms of the reps. Hell, Colton Vasek has 2 sacks. I don't think Trey Moore has. He may have 2 sacks. Let me double check that. But the bottom line is
Trey Moore has 3.5. Chip, just
3.5 sacks. Because that's what they're paying him big money for. Big money. So I'm glad that he found it, because this could have been a really awkward, uncomfortable conversation at the end of the season with as much money as Texas is paying Trey Moore, who is one of the top NIL earners from the offseason to, you know, but the key is get hot at the right time. And this is the right time. Postseason, baby. So let's see it. All right, Eric, good stuff, my man. Eric and I will be in Atlanta for the SEC championship game, which means we will have a recap right after the game. So be looking for us there in Hotlanta to give you our thoughts on how this epic SEC title game, a rematch of Texas and Georgia, who were predicted by the media to be in the SEC championship game. And if you're watching the College Football Playoff Committee rankings, the second to last rankings next Tuesday will be the final pairings for the first ever 12-team college football playoff. If those current rankings hold, Texas would play Georgia before even getting to the college football playoff final. They'd play in the quarterfinals, for crying out loud. So we came into the year saying Texas and Georgia could meet 3 times, and that is still a possibility. So we will keep you posted. Make sure you get over to horns247.com, become an annual member so that you have VIP access to all of the team sites on the preeminent 24/7 sports network. And again, please like and subscribe this Horns 24/7 YouTube channel so that we can grow. You know, that's what we need to do. Our bosses like that. And feel free to leave us a 5-star rating wherever you listen to this incredible podcast. That helps us stay employed as well. For Eric Henry, I am Chip Brown. Until next time, stay safe and keep the faith.